Okay, good day, people. So I'm going to follow up a little bit on this discussion on consciousness and the variations, sort of family resemblances of different phenomena, I guess, that we're going to say are related to consciousness, awareness, sentience, I guess these kinds of things. And this is somewhat precipitated by the very interesting videos that Fred, conference report, has been posting up. He's making porridge there, and he's been talking about consciousness a little bit. And he recently suggested, and hey, Fred, how's it going? He recently suggested that something to the effect that there may, and he was speculating that there may come a day when people really no longer use the notion of consciousness, that it just falls by the wayside as I don't want to say nonsensical, but just unnecessary, something like this. And I guess, I would want to say I'm not sure that it'll really ever disappear, and for all kinds of reasons. And as much as I do think it is a problem to simply say that there is this thing called consciousness and try to delimit it as if it were specifiable, and then even delimit where it is and then say it's only in humans and this kind of stuff. I mean, I think there are obviously various ranges, degrees, scopes, and again, family resemblance, species relatives of whatever we mean by conscience or consciousness, conscience, awareness, sentience, self-awareness. I was trying to suggest irritability, and maybe part of the way would be, I'm going to put a link to that earlier video I shot, I guess it was a couple, maybe 2 weeks ago, but it's to follow that discussion, and you were suggesting this as well, right? I think it has to be something like it's a layered phenomenon, right? You're not going to find consciousness, or it's certainly not self-reflexive consciousness as has been made possible by various communication media at the subatomic level. Now, is there something at the subatomic level that's in that same family resemblance? Well, I don't know. I myself, I'm going to put it at least at the level of the biological, where you're going to have things like homeostasis. You're going to have things like, a teleological gearing into the world of negentropic processes, at least that are momentarily staving off the second law. You're having things like predation. You're having things like nutrient gradients, where something can be deprived, and there seems to be a difference between the motivations of life and the kind of causal processes that operate in the inorganic. At any rate, I think part of the difficulty there, I guess, is trying to address what that basal level, that sort of ground level of irritability would look like. And I do think that there is a kind of irritability which is, it's at the cell, it's at maybe just at the lowest, simplest forms of life, where there's an irritability that's registered in the environment without necessarily postulating itself. And I think there are a lot of different ways to get at this phenomena that are occurring at multiple levels. And maybe I should make this even clearer. When I'm suggesting that there's a kind of multiple layers and levels of something like irritability, and then a kind of sentience and awareness, and then consciousness, and then self, or feelings, and then consciousness, and then self-reflexive consciousness. uh, I'm not suggesting that as one layer comes on, the other layers disappear. It's not as if humans are only at this plane and having this thing called self-reflexive consciousness and all that other stuff they left behind. No, it's that all of these dynamics they're interpenetrating, they're co-adaptive, they're integrative, and co-developmental. And so if you take something like, well, I do two scales, take the human and then take just the earth. I mean, I think the earth is irritated. I don't think one has to claim that the earth is sentient. I don't think one has to claim that the earth is conscious. I don't think one has to claim that the earth has feelings. But to recognize the earth's homeostatic capacities geared in by a kind of autopoetic irritability that's a response to the various proportionality gradients that need to be met in order for its continuance. And it doesn't have to postulate itself. I mean, think of in the human level, sort of, it's a weak comparison, but maybe it's helpful. Some person can be sleeping and I don't know, something could happen. There could be a dog barking, or there could be a fly buzzing around the room, or there could just be something in the room, and the person may move around, adjust the covers, even swat at something at their head, and without waking up, readjust. And so there's something like a kind of non self aware sentience that's manipulating the body, orienting to the environment without anything like recall of it. And see, I think, Fred, this is more on this question of, why will the concept of consciousness probably not go away? I think it's because, best of my knowledge, I don't think we're going to be able to get away with, we're ever going to get away from things like anesthesia. There is a sense in which they put people under, and, for surgery, I think we are going to end up saying, that the body is still, it's subject to various forms of irritability. I mean, infections can happen, all kinds of stuff, but it's not really at the level of consciousness. In the same way that people have blackouts, there are different, I guess, brain anomalies that make for different kinds of distortions, I guess, of time, losses of time, and those sorts of phenomena seem to be very, they're sort of just mundane every day. I mean, people go to sleep, or people get inebriated, and there is some change of consciousness and then loss of consciousness. And, I think sometimes maybe that's some of the way to get at it, is that sometimes changes of consciousness are related to feeling states and awareness states. And that, again, there's this whole host of these very related phenomena. They're integrated in layers developmentally, that the nervous system builds upon the prior elements, making them the kinds of feeling that we have toward the world about events, scenarios. Those become objects for the next layer up of consciousness. It's like each developmental layer is able to take the previous relation as an object in its own regard. And I mean, I think that the difficulty that many people seem to have with it is that at its base level, at the ground level, there isn't a self who's conscious. Well, there isn't. There's just organic process. And it, if anything, without self-recognition, without postulating itself, without having anything like self-awareness, it simply, makes possible, I guess we'll say, makes possible a particular kind of relationship with what is around it and what's inside it. And that double positioning is subject to forms of irritability without any form of self-recognition. And I think that boggles people. They want to say, what? No, well, that's not really even what I mean by consciousness, but that has to be part of the same family. So I don't know if, does anything in the inorganic ever get irritated? I don't know, but I think as soon as you move to anything in life, anything that's living, irritation happens. And that irritation, it doesn't have to be conscious, even if that's sort of the ground root of what eventually, when given enough time, becomes integrated in, coupled with, and part of what we experience as consciousness. All right, so thanks.